Let's take a look at the bottom of page 106. We talked about the executive departments, and now we're going to talk about the independent agencies and commissions. So more than 100 years ago, Congress created the first independent agency called the Interstate Commerce Commission. And their main purpose was to regulate the railroads, because the railroads connected different states together, and they wanted to make sure that they were following all the rules and not transporting things across state borders that would violate other states' laws. Today, the federal government has more than 70 independent agencies, and they handle things that fall outside of the three branches, the legislative, executive, and judicial, things that they wouldn't normally get involved with. The president appoints these people, and then they must be approved by the Senate, just like the other cabinet members and department members. The agencies fall into two main groups. There are ones that administer public programs that serve the public, and ones that regulate companies and businesses. So we'll talk about a few of them in a little bit of detail. So the first one is called the Environmental Protection Agency, and the EPA's job is to protect the country's environment. So they regulate pollution and regulate companies doing shady things. Some of you guys who might be in science class may have watched a movie at Miss B's called Dark Water, and that's something that the EPA would have got involved with, a company putting pollutants into the water. The United States has become very crowded. The land, the air, and the water very oftentimes are polluted, and a lot of these giant companies don't really care about the pollution they put out because doing things the clean way and the right way costs more money, and most of them are concerned mainly about profit. So the EPA's job is to regulate these companies and try to make sure that the environment and the people stay safe and clean. The next one is NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and their funding has been cut quite a bit lately, but their funding might go up because Donald Trump actually created a new branch of government called the Space Force. So NASA, they don't just go to space. One of the big benefits we get from them is the technology that they create eventually makes its way down to us. Like the reason we have cell phones is because communication technology got better when we were trying to go to the moon, and eventually that turned into the technology we have today, which is cell phones. So even if you don't care about space, there are benefits to putting money into NASA that will eventually come back to us. The next one is the United States Postal Service, and they have been in the news quite a bit lately. This election is incredibly different because so many people are mailing in their ballots. And the Postmaster General, his name is Louis DeJoy, he is under a little bit of scrutiny right now because he has put out an order that the mail carriers are not allowed to put in any overtime collecting mail and delivering mail. And there's been some recent reports that mailboxes, the public ones, have been getting removed. All of those things don't seem to make very much sense considering how much mail is going out for this election. There's millions of ballots that have already been cast. So there's an investigation and a court case going on right now on whether or not he's allowed to tell these mail carriers to not work. The next one is called Action, and Action is kind of an umbrella term. It supervises some of our volunteer organizations like the Peace Corps and VISTA. And the Peace Corps, their main goal is to develop friendly relations between the United States and other countries, and it's usually by doing volunteer work, by sending like teachers, doctors, and things like that to countries that don't have the same resources as us. The Interstate Commerce Commission is the next one. We mentioned that at the beginning of the chapter, and their job is to regulate trade and business between states. So it's not between countries, but between states. Like every day I come from Pennsylvania into Ohio, and they might be getting involved if these quarantines continue to increase. The next one is the Federal Trade Commission, and their main responsibility is to prevent unfair practices from businesses. And some examples of that are price fixing and false labeling. Price fixing is something shady where a couple of companies can come together and agree to keep their prices high even though they're competitors. So like imagine gas is about $2 a gallon right now. But what if every gas station in Youngstown and Mahoning County all decided to raise their gas to $5 per gallon? People need gas. They don't have a choice. So they'd have no choice but to pay that high price. And if these companies go behind closed doors and make that kind of deal, that's price fixing and it's illegal. And false labeling just means saying your product that you're selling does something that it doesn't do. There was a pastor, one of the televangelists, the guy who does church stuff on TV, who got criticized recently because he was selling medicine that he said could cure the coronavirus, and there was no proof that that was actually true. So he got investigated by the FTC. The next one is the Federal Communications Commission, and they regulate radio and television stations and where they're allowed to broadcast. Then there's the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Their job is to protect consumers, which is us, the regular people, from unsafe products, things that could cause injury or death. There was a story a few years ago about some Toyota cars that were having problems with their airbags exploding. They were Takata airbags, and when the airbags would explode, it was sending pieces of metal into the drivers' faces. And they got investigated by the Consumer Product Safety Commission, and they had to recall all of these cars and replace the airbags. There's been other products. There was a blender that could blend food and cook it at the same time. But what was happening is while people were making like soup in the blender, it would get so hot that it would explode and send glass and metal flying into people's faces. And those products get recalled, pulled off the shelf, and discontinued. There's also the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and they regulate nuclear power plants to make sure they stay safe. Now, nuclear power plants make electricity for us, and they do a lot of good, but there's a lot of potential for things to go wrong if they're not careful about how they work. Okay, so we'll skip this page, go to the last page, which is talking about foreign aid. And foreign aid is something that our country spends a lot of money on. Foreign means other countries. And not every country is as well off as America. So what we will very oftentimes do is give money to other countries that don't have as much money as us, hoping that it'll help them get on their feet, and eventually they'll be able to repay us, whether that's from, paying back the actual money or by giving us some kind of privileges like letting us set up military bases or use some of their resources. And a lot of people disagree with how much money we should spend on other countries. And it's a tough situation. We need to decide, do we spend more money on problems in America, or should we spend money trying to help people? And it's always a balancing act to figure out what the best way to spend our money is, because we do not have an unlimited supply of money. Okay, guys. So what I need you to do now is go into Chapter 8 and knock out the worksheet for Chapter 8, Lesson 3.